Are you a parent navigating the complexities of co-parenting, family court, or even domestic violence? If you are looking for ways to help protect your children and build a strong and supportive community around you, then look no further. Gray Minds Think Alike is your go-to resource for everything related to the complexities of family life. Join us as we dive into thoughtful conversations with experts and explore practical tips and strategies for tackling the challenges of parenthood in the throes of adversity so that no parent feels alone and every child's safety is protected. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gray Minds Think Alike. Joining us today is Lily Schwark, a dedicated family court advocate and domestic violence survivor who turned her personal experience into a mission for change. Lily is the vice president and co-founder of Florida Protective Parents, a community of advocates trying to protect children through research, education, and court reform. Lily is also the current president of Families Against Court Travesties, also known as FACTS. Just for our listeners, I met Lily right after Greyson was killed, along with many other parent advocates wanting to help. We appeared at many city council meetings to help spread awareness of Family Court Awareness Month and just about family court reform in general. So it's so nice to see you again and have you here, Lily. How are you?
It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much, Allie. It feels like yesterday that Greyson was murdered and I came into the court system. It doesn't feel like it's been however long it's been. It's really crazy. I think my daughter is a year younger than Greyson. So every time around his birthday and I see your post, I just think, oh my God, like I cannot believe it's been this much time.
Yeah, me neither. It's actually coming up to his 4-year angelversary in heaven, which is crazy because he was only 4 when he died. So it's like his whole life just went by.
It's so awful. And I really appreciate the work that you do. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Greyson. I think when we talk about, there's always like this thing online that's like, what radicalized you? And what radicalized me was Greyson's murder, for sure. I think I had just gotten into the court system myself, and it's every parent's worst nightmare. And then you see that, and it was the same county I was in, and I was like, this is not possible. It's not possible that this is happening, and you were ignored. And so it definitely radicalized me into saying, okay, this is a systemic issue. This is something that we need to address, and how can I help? And that's when I showed up to Greyson's vigil, and I met you, and I met other wonderful advocates, and then we got together and started Florida Protective Parents, and I joined Families Against Court Travesties, which has been an organization for 20 years. And so it's incredible to kind of be here and be in the work and hold space for the people that are still going through it, and hold space for the victims, and hopefully keep on the hope that things are going to get better.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your background and how you became an advocate. I know you're a survivor, so if you want to share a little bit of your story, go ahead. But then also tell us about how Florida Protective Parents began and what it is.
Yeah, definitely. So it's an interesting story. I always tell everyone that I wasn't with a full-blown narcissist because I don't think I would have gotten out as easily as I did. I was in the court system for 2 years, and many of my friends, of people that I help, litigants, they're in the court 5, 6 years, some 13 years until their kids age out. Some people have been in the court system since their kids are 6 months old, and they don't get out until that kid is 18. And I really equate it to being in jail. I really feel like you're in jail and here's your inmate number. And if you don't learn about the court system and the rules, you're either in Gen Pop or you're in maximum security, because you lose more and more of your rights as you go. And it's very degrading. The court system is extremely degrading. And so my ex abused drugs, and he was verbally, emotionally abusive. He was very controlling. And I kind of already knew in my head that getting out was going to be very hard. And he was not going to let me go without a fight. So I tried to do everything in my power to make him happy so that I could leave. And I bought a house. I left him my home. I bought him a brand new car and all my savings and my student. He wouldn't even let me have a job for so long. So student grants and money, any type of my tax returns, anything that I had, it was all left there.
So would you say that was coercive control, the fact that he controlled your finances and everything?
100%. I've always been pretty financially savvy. So he would always kind of brag to people that I was the one who held the pants in the relationship and I held the purse string. All I was really a bookkeeper for him. I had to allot money for drugs every week. I had to make sure that there was $400 for weed for that week. And I wasn't allowed to buy my daughter a $50 pair of shoes when she was learning how to walk. As moms, and we're trying to get the best for our kids, when you're with somebody who is so selfish and everything is for them, and it's just such a hard thing to navigate. And it was something that I was like, I cannot continue to do this. So when I left with my daughter and nothing, I was sleeping on my mom's couch. I gave him everything and was just praying that he would let me walk away. And for a while, it worked. He was willing to work with me and see her. And he just continually, after I left, got really bad into drugs. And I picked up my daughter one day and he was on cocaine. He had friends party and my daughter was 1 year old and I went to pick her up at his house and she was naked out of the bath and there was 20 or 30 guys in their 20s with cases of beer, baggies of weed, baggies of cocaine in their hands walking through and I could see what was happening. And obviously, like my immediate reaction was, oh my God, I have to get my baby out of this house. And it's like he knew that he had messed up to a point where he couldn't come back. And he had given me all her clothes and everything. And he was just so erratic and shaking and things like that. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. And I said to him, if you want to see her again, you're going to have to enter a 90-day program. Like you're going to have to go at least to NA and get yourself figured out. And I tried to work with him as best as I could. And for a long time, it was just a relationship between me and him, trying to figure this out. And it didn't really hit me how abused I was. I just thought I was in a really toxic relationship and I had to get out because I didn't even like who I was becoming anymore. You get reactive abuse and you become the person that starts yelling. And I didn't like that. I didn't like who I was. So during the time after I left, he got a new girlfriend, and what I like to call stepmother syndrome happened, where they believe the new supply believes the narcissist, they believe everything that they're saying, oh, I'm being taken away from my kid, and they start to intervene and they start to say, this time she was a paralegal, so she pushed him very hard to get into the court system, and she's going to pay you child support, you're going to have full custody, she's an alienator, all of those check boxes that we now know, those are like classic narc handbook. Like they could just take a handbook and it goes down the list. I had an attorney who was an adoption attorney and she was very interesting, very creative, and she helped me navigate. And so we did use some interesting legal tactics that if you guys want to look up my docket, you can go ahead and look me up.
Okay.
But she was very interesting. And so for a long time we were able to delay things. And that's something that I always recommend. If you're a parent who, like me, like Ali, you were never married, the father doesn't have his paternity established yet in the state of Florida, delay as long as you can. If he's not a safe person, go ahead and delay that. There's plenty of tactics to delay, motions to dismiss and things like that. A motion for status quo, where you ask the court to give you status quo in the meantime, because they're going to immediately ask for temporary time sharing orders. So things like that helped me. Thankfully, my ex was so egotistical that he never asked for temporary time sharing. And he said he didn't want to do a DNA test because he wanted me to admit to the judge that was my child, that was his child. So thankfully, it got to the point where we finally went to mediation and I had as much leverage as I could. I did a lot of court watching. I learned a lot about the court system. I got in with so many wonderful women, so many stories, really helped me fine tune what was possible, what I couldn't do. It helped me navigate his threats. So that was so huge in being able to secure. First, I secured 90%. And I waited to do child support because the money drives these men. So I was like, let's just get the time sharing figured out. I'm not interested in child support. Let's do that. Once I got to the point where I had majority time sharing, I started to drain him. Like I flipped the tactics that they use against us. I flipped and used those, right? It was like, okay, I waited 3-4 months. Now I'm going to do child support. Child support was a lot because I had 90%. And then he had to pay half of daycare. So he was paying me $1,000 a month and he was not making that much money. And he had lost a good job because he was always on drugs. So at the point where we were at, he was just exhausted. And then I was able to exhaust him and exhaust him. And even though my daughter was coming back from those visits telling me, I don't want to go back, and screaming and crying and telling me that she was being left alone in a room for hours at a time. In my head, I just kept thinking, what else can I use? Because I had been told, don't say abuse. Don't go to court and tell anyone he abused you. You can, if I had proof of the drugs, so I did send that. I was like, I have pictures, I have everything. He had been arrested for substance. So I was like able to use that, but it was
I'm curious if you were to not tell the judge who was the father and just say, I don't know what would have done.
Well, see,
what he
the
would have
thing
done.
was is that like they never pushed it. And it was like
That's
sometimes
interesting.
what these guys will do is they will just file things in court to intimidate you. And they will never go through with it.
Since dad did, and I don't think that I could have ever have reversed the psychology because my brain does not think like his did.
100%. Like it is, like I said, my abuser was a baby narc compared to everyone else. Like we were both in our young 20s, and I always tell people they evolve.
Absolutely.
They go on to their next victim and they are better, stronger, smarter.
Yep. It's like an animal eats a prey and then gets stronger and hungrier and gets something bigger and bigger each time.
I'm really good friends with his ex-girlfriend that he was with for 7 years. And she told me horrific things that never happened to me, that he would hit her. And I was like, I never got hit. And so it was like, they know what to use. They realize what worked, what didn't work. Oh, I lost her because of this. So I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to do something else. And it's in their nature to control and they can't really help it. So it's like, and then they like to play the card. I'm reformed. I'm so much better. And then you go back to all the girlfriends and it's a different version, but the same flavor of things. So I do say, yeah, I was probably his second serious relationship. He was my first. And so that was a big catalyst to say, okay, this is why I got out. I will never say I got out because I was stronger, better. I got out because I was dealing with somebody who wasn't as experienced. And I got all the knowledge from all these women who had been dealing with crazier men and older and more experienced. So I saw all the tricks and things like that. So I don't think that you could just get by. Like I love Tina Swith and I love One Mom's Battle. One of the things she says is, profile your narc, profile them, figure out what triggers them, figure out what pushes their buttons, make a list of it, put things in writing of what really bothers that person or what they're interested in. And those are the key pieces that you're going to drive your strategy around. Not everybody has the same thing. Some men have unlimited money. They don't care. You're not going to drain them financially. They could have millions in the bank. Sure. It's never going to happen. I think to your point, I don't think that there's anything that you could have done. Like, no, hell no. Like it's just I got lucky. I got lucky and
at least your ex did what was in your daughter's best interest in the end.
Mm-hmm. So my ex, towards the end of my court battle, his girlfriend began hitting my daughter. And so she came home and told me, and I tried to have a conversation with him, and we're both Latin, and it's common in our cultures to do that. So I had a conversation with him. I don't condone it, but I was like, she's very heavily pregnant. Like, is there something going on? Can you talk to her? And of course, vehemently denied it. You're raising a little liar. Just derogatory comments about a child. And thankfully, because I bought that property, and even though my name wasn't on the title, I gave the money for it. I didn't realize that I had interest in it. So I spoke to a couple of property attorneys after I got tipped off by, thankfully, survivor moms, right? And I looked into it and I was able to send him a demand letter for my equity in the home. And because my ex was motivated by money, he turned around and said, have her drop the suit. She can have full custody.
Wow.
And
I begged for that. I said, sign away your rights and I will ask for nothing.
Yeah. And on top of that, he also wanted $20,000, which is illegal.
That's extortion.
It's selling your kid. It's child trafficking. So that was kind of off the table. Thankfully, like my attorney was like, you guys will both go to jail for this if you try to even attempt that. So he signed away his rights. I was able to convince him like, hey, you're paying so much child support. You're going to make that money in a few years anyways, like two years, you'll get the money back. That was kind of the process. And he signed away his rights. I mean, the guy was such a dramatic, theatrical person that he signed away his rights on the day his other baby was born because he said, I needed to go into her life fresh. Let me just give up one kid and get another kid,
That's
right?
so pathetic. So pathetic. But your daughter is in a better place. Now, let's
Yeah.
talk about Florida Protective Parents and how that began and what it does for Floridians.
Yes. So Florida Protective Parents really came about because of Greyson. Nina is amazing. She's the president of Florida Protective Parents. We have Jessica and Daria. So we're a group of moms that really decided, okay, what can we do to help other moms? So we put together Florida Protective Parents, but not just other moms, like other domestic violence survivors. And really what Florida Protective Parents is a conduit to other resources. So if you come to us for help, we're going to point you in the right direction, tell you, hey, like you might want to look at this statute or this place, or you might want to look at this case law. You want to look into play therapy. We're going to analyze like what's going on and like what you might need. Honestly, Florida Protective Parents has taken a little bit of a step back from really dealing with cases or anything like that, just because a ton of trauma. And we want to try to explore more holistic or more people that can have that type of experience or that type of training to deal with the amount of trauma. You can tell people ask for help all the time, Allie, I'm sure. And you're just
No, and I actually always refer them to one of you because you do have a little bit more manpower than I do.
Mhm.
And I want to make sure that these people that reach out to me get proper help or at least the right tools, which is
Yeah,
why
like
I do this podcast and have people like you on. So that way maybe they can just listen to an episode and understand a little bit more.
that's a great thing. Like we have the power of networking, right? And so we've built a network of survivors, men and women. We do have men. So we have built kind of a survivor network and we're able to, because we do so much court watching with Families Against Court Travesties, we're able to see a case and be like, no, I know a case just like yours. Here, take a look at what they did. And so I really feel like the power of court watching. So we always work hand in hand, right? Families Against Court Travesties and then Florida Protective Parents.
So tell everyone what exactly FACTS is.
So FACTS is an organization that was founded like 22 years ago. And they were founded primarily because this group of feminists in the National Organization of Women saw a need for people to attend court watches. They had women who needed help, like they were domestic violence injunctions and things like that, and they wanted support. So they created these court watchers so they would go to court, and this was in person 20 years ago. They would go to court and they would watch court hearings for them and do court watch reports and things like that. What is so wonderful about during COVID is that everything turned Zoom, right? All these court hearings are on Zoom. Now we have court hearings like CMCs are normally on Zoom, and now we're able to court watch like national. So that's the wonderful thing. And so what we did is we capitalized on that. Like, oh my God, like we Greyson, and then we found Families Against Court Travesties, and I started court watching all over.
The main initiative of FACTS, the court watching.
Yeah, that's our
Do
main
they do
initiative.
anything else?
For right now, no.
Okay.
Became the president, and they had previous initiatives and things like that, and they would do protests. And when I got handed the keys of the kingdom a little bit, like we've decided to go back to basics. And so we're revamping our website. It's going to be out very soon. We are redoing our court watch report forms because I am an accountant. I come from in data analytics. Like I love data. And one of the things that's severely missing for us is research in high conflict divorces, right? So my idea is that we're going to start doing court watch report forms that are going to hit data points, that we're going to be able to have metrics and analyze and be able to do that, and working with wonderful like data scientists on that too. So we're going to try and just focus on court watches. And Families Against Court Travesties is really a neutral place. Anyone can request a court watch. We'll take a court watch from anyone in the world. Does not matter.
Tell everyone what exactly court watch is, because I think I probably have some listeners that have no idea that people can actually watch your case.
So in the United States, it is completely legal, ethical, moral, that any citizen in the United States can visit pretty much any court hearing except for like dependency and certain court hearings that are private. But not many people know that our family court hearings are completely public. Our records are completely public. That's one of the points that I say it's a little bit degrading because all of our information is out there for anyone to see. My tax returns, my financial statements. It's the amount
Crazy.
of data that they have on us for public view is really concerning to me sometimes. But the great thing about that is that you're allowed to be in any hearing. And when you need help or you feel like alone or scared and you want someone to at least view and witness what's happening to you, then it's great to ask for a court watcher, right? And so we're like a conduit. We find volunteers and we assign them. We say, hey, there's a court hearing. Do you want to come to it? It's virtual. It's this day. And you just log into Zoom,
I've done a few.
You're quiet, you're professional, you don't say anything, you take notes if you want, and you basically just watch.
I just have one comment before I forget. I sat in on some hearing, I don't remember, but I was asked specifically if I would. And the judge found out that I was on and literally told the two people in the hearing that they don't want a grandstand audience. And they made us all leave.
Yeah, that does happen. That definitely does happen. And that's why it's our right. And that's what we, like Families Against Court Travesties, that's why it's so important for us to be involved because anybody can start a court watch, right? Like you can put your hearing on Facebook. And I see a lot of people doing that now. And that's wonderful. But you run the risk of being kicked out, right? What we do is we go back to the judges because I'm out of court. No one's going to come and harm my case. So I can go to a judge and the chief judge. And that's what we do. We reach out to the chief judge and we say, hey, we were kicked out of this and so hearing. You do know that we're allowed to be there. Here's the statute. We are Sunshine State, so we have freedom of information, like things like that. And they will normally reprimand the judge who did that. And then that will never happen again. You'll be allowed in the hearing. And that's what happens. So that's how we deal with judges kicking us out.
How do judges get reprimanded?
Well, they do it internally. They reprimand them internally. Hey, don't do that again, type of thing. That's not going to be on record.
I think you just saw my name and got nervous.
Yeah, 100%. I think anybody would get nervous in Broward seeing Ali Kessler or even Palm Beach or Miami seeing you on a hearing. Most of the time, it's pretty blasé. Like we're in Palm Beach a lot. It was founded in Palm Beach. And so the judges there know us. So judges in Miami, Broward, Palm Beach, they don't really give us too much trouble. They don't kick us out. They actually are very polite, kind. They welcome us in. Like, okay, thank you. Just make sure. It depends on judge. They might ask you to turn your camera off. They might ask you to turn your camera on. They might ask you to put your court watcher in the name, or they might ask you to put a name. Honestly, they can't ask you what's your full name, and that doesn't happen. So people who are afraid to court watch, I urge you to not be so afraid. Come join us. Come talk to us.
Get out of it. What is one hope to the benefit from watching someone else's court case?
So personally, I will even say that I wouldn't have my daughter today if I didn't do court watching. It allowed me to learn the ins and outs. And so the big picture is you go to court. I've never been to court. I've never gotten arrested. Nothing has ever happened to me that I've been to court. So I didn't know how to behave. I didn't know if you have to stand up. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. How that worked. So when you go to these court hearings, you see how to behave. You're able to see how the judge behaves. You can court watch your judge. And I did that quite often to see what made him mad, what made him tick, what he actually cared about, because certain judges care about certain things, right?
Right.
And some of them are more strict. Some of them are more lenient. You can see what you can get away with, what you can't get away with, like versus entering evidence. I'm not talking about doing anything crazy.
Right. No, that's a great idea to actually watch court cases from the judge that, you're scheduled with. I wish I had that.
100%. And one of the things that I would do is I would turn my camera off, just put iPhone and go to his CMCs. CMCs are case management conferences. They're usually 5 minutes every morning. The judges have them on their calendar. And there's like a group of 50 or 60 people that are in there. And the judge just goes through and looks at people's cases and things like that and orders certain things like, oh, you got to subpoena this person and we'll add that person in. So that's like nice to just be able to go in and be anonymous. And the CMCs are easier for you to just go in and be a fly on the wall and see what's happening if you don't want to show your face or you're afraid your judge is going to recognize you or something like that. So those are good ways to be involved and see those things. The other benefits is you get to see other survivors, right? How they are handling things, what motions are being filed. So if you have a similar situation, I can add this in my injunction and the case law that's being used. And one of the things I'll say is your
That's great for
attorneys.
especially pro se people need as much help as possible.
Yeah, and here's the thing is I love pro se people because pro se people, they really try to do their research. They're more in tune with the court system. Whereas, like, I even feel like people who have attorneys need more help because you trust your attorney. You are like
Exactly.
paying you thousands of dollars to take care of this. And the way that I see so many attorneys treating people is insane. They treat them like you're not their client, like they're your self-defense lawyer, right? Like they're your, I forget what that's called when you get arrested and they give you an attorney. It's like legal aid or something. They act like
Hmm.
you're not paying them and
Right.
they will convince you not to file things. And I see that so many
Right.
times, like I'll say,
Because they're
you
lazy and they
probably,
don't want to do more work, pretty much.
it's not even, and sometimes I don't even think that it's lazy. You have to remember that the American Bar Association is a fraternity. They're
Yes.
not part of our federal government and they are not regulated by any outside sources. So when you get your bar license, it's like joining that frat. And at the end of the day, what is going to be protected is the members in that organization. So you don't really want to ruffle feathers of another attorney. You don't want to ruffle feathers of a judge because you don't know when you're going to sit in front of them again. Or another attorney might turn into a judge and you might have to sit in front of them. So attorneys are very unlikely to order sanctions against another attorney, even if it is warranted. They're very unlikely to go toe to toe, even though they know it's right. They're more conservative and they also try to, like you said, sometimes they're just lazy and they're going to try to convince you to settle out of court. Well, let's just settle for 50-50. That's the most you're going to get anyways.
Right. I
So
believe that's what
dangerous.
happened with me. I believe that my attorney was negligent.
Yeah. And it's so dangerous because you really believe this person. You trust them.
I
Like,
trusted them. Their experience, this is their field. They know best. Little did I know that what I actually went through was called coercive control and was wrong. And we had tons of red flags that could have prevented Greyson's death. A lot
it's,
of them are not trained properly, especially in DV. And now that Greyson's law exists, we still need to get the lawyers and judges and gals and mediators, everybody trained on domestic violence.
yeah. And I'm very cynical and have a thought of they do know. They know what's going on. They see this. They know the signs. They're just choosing to pick up their paycheck and prioritize that over and move on to the next case. And there are attorney offices that treat cases like it's McDonald's. In out,
Right,
here. Let's get you through the drive-through. Keep going. I want to settle this. I want to get this off my books. You're not
right,
paying me enough for this.
right.
And it turns into you have some attorneys that are super aggressive and will subpoena and do all of this casework that ultimately amounts to nothing because they're going to push you into this and they're just draining your retainer, right? And then you have attorneys that are like trying to convince you because they generally think like this is going to work itself out. I've seen other cases like this. Like you said, they're not trained in this. And they'll tell you, just give him 50-50 or just do this or just do that. Let's not rock the boat. And those are especially dangerous, I think, because they ignore our gut. So,
Right.
like, you have a gut instinct and you're talking to them, I need this done.
Yep.
And they're ignoring you. That's how what happened to Grayson happened. That's how it keeps
Yep. I
happening
mean,
to.
Grayson's father got 50-50 because my lawyer just agreed to it and said, well, that's what it 50-50 is what the judge is going to give. But they ignored all the facts, like he had severe PTSD from being in a cult and he had mental disorders and all of the other red flags that we presented. He should have never have gotten 50% just to have DNA.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I refuse to take that for an answer. I was told that initially. I couldn't
Well,
really
I
afford.
believed her because she was the lawyer. What do I know? I have a
No, a
degree in
hundred percent.
advertising.
Yeah. I mean, like that is 100% like the danger. And I think, the only difference between me and you is I already be like, and I'm just saying this from a point of like, I'm a brown woman in America. I expect to be oppressed by these systems. So when I walked into court or I got my served, I knew I had a very bad chance of being treated fairly. And thankfully, that was not my experience. But it is the experience of so many Black and brown women that I was already on cautious. And I will never fully trust anyone who's in a position of authority that works with these other positions of authority to tell me what my rights are. And unfortunately, that did save a lot of my headache and my pain, but that is the system for us. And I think it's for all women that come into the system. You need to understand you are not going to be believed. You are not going to be in this position of privilege that maybe you've enjoyed for most of your life. You've
Right.
enjoyed, like, not for nothing, Allie, but I'm saying, like, if you went to the police and you said, I got robbed and it was this guy, and a lot of times they might believe you. They might question me. Did you know him? Were you hooking? You know what I'm saying? It becomes a whole different conversation when you're Black or brown versus when you're white in most systems. And so when you go into the court cases, I knew I'm going to be put down. And people
Right.
are going to tell me that things aren't possible, that maybe would be possible for somebody with more money or more leverage. Because honestly, Allie, if you had $100,000 in the bank, do you think your attorney would have said, no, Allie, you could go for full, you need to do 50-50? I doubt it.
I
If you
always
have
say that money was definitely a factor and that it could have saved Greyson's life, which is really sad in today's
Yeah,
world.
it is extremely sad. It's like the people with the most money in court end up, if not getting what they want, end up being able to torture the other person in court. Sometimes they don't get what they want, but there's an ability to continue bringing that other person back and back to court. So that's what's really dangerous. And just, I know I went off on a whole tangent, but to go back to court watching, it's so important to know your rights. It's so important to know, what is actually real. Because when you go into court, it feels like Alice in Wonderland. You feel like you're in Bizarro World and everything is upside down, and you're like, well, what do you mean he hit my kid and you guys can't do anything about it? What do you mean, like, he was screaming at her and telling her that I hate her and I'm a bad mother and you can't do anything? They tell you, oh, sorry, that's not enough to go in front of the judge, right? And so knowing what is possible and what's not possible, I think, is a game changer to empowering yourself to make better decisions and empowering yourself to advocate for yourself and really push and say, no, you can't tell me I can't file an injunction, because I know I can't, because I saw 3 other cases where they got an injunction and they had less than I did. I
Well,
think
now
it's
knowing what I know since Greyson's death, I mean, there were so many things that should have been done throughout Greyson's entire life that never were, including
yeah,
a psych eval that was just randomly dropped when Greyson was 2 years old. I don't know what happened to it.
exactly. And we're in so much trauma, and I can tell you I would pass out. Like, I would be found blacked out in my bathroom because didn't even know. I was just so overwhelmed, overloaded with all of this information. And once you get hit in court, all of this other trauma starts to compound on you that you didn't even realize. Once you start realizing that this is an abusive person, you go back and you start looking at every single point and you're like, oh my God, what I thought was normal was him prepping me for this, for ruining my life. And so
So how
that,
do you get a judge to believe you?
well, that's such a loaded question and such a thing that I don't even know if there's an answer to that. Let's flip a coin. What does he feel like today? What does this judge feel like today? You're at the
Is he ready
mercy
to go to
of,
happy hour?
you're right, you're at the mercy of someone, right? And that's why I say court watching is important, so you find out who this person is, what makes him tick, what makes her tick, what really is going to impress her. What is going to make a judge believe you is what is the composition of their own set of values, their own set of ideas, prejudices, biases, things like that. And so investigating that, but also trying to make sure that your side of the street is clean, that you are doing by the rules of what they want you to do.
What
So
about
those things
collecting
are.
evidence? What would you suggest for parents that are in family court do? What should they look for? Because I know for me, I wrote down things every single day in a journal, so I was able to have a running list because we forget. So what else do you recommend?
So we definitely like, and I urge everybody to really take documentation courses, and Tina Swithin has one. You can reach out to us at Florida Protective Parents or Facts if you're asking for documentation. I can give you guys a template. But I know how daunting documentation is and how it can bring up a lot of PTSD too. Because when you're right before your hearing and you have to go through 100 text messages of that person telling you that they want to kill you, that sends you into a spiral where you gotta have
I'm
a bottle
still
of
in
wine
that.
next to you or Xanax or something. It's awful. So what I always recommend to women is save it and drop it in a folder. So text messages, things like that, talking parents, medical emails, things, anything like that's pertinent to your case and it happens on a day-to-day basis and you're documenting that. First, try to get a source that's verifiable, going to be admissible in court. And that's the first thing. You don't want to just, I love you having a journal, and I think everybody should have a journal while they're going through this so that they can look at things that the details that they might have missed and think about their mindset in that moment. But having something like screenshots, doctor's notes, things like that, and dropping them in one big folder, like on Google Drive or OneBox, and just put the date on it and just a quick like doctor's note and then the date and
I actually had a
maybe like
spreadsheet and I actually inserted documents in the spreadsheet. It
yeah,
was
and that's
crazy.
wonderful. And I think if you're just starting out doing this daily, like things that come up, and then when I was going to have a hearing, what I would do is I would search keywords and look for that and just create a specific folder for that hearing or that motion. That way I wasn't inundated while you're trying
Right.
to prepare for a hearing and you are spending 9 to 10 hours at your kitchen table trying to ruffle through papers and everything like that. So putting keywords and things like dropping it in the correct folder, like this is medical, I'm going to drop it in a medical folder, or this
Right.
is school, I'm going to drop
Stay
it in a school folder.
organized.
Yeah, staying organized like that in a way that's not going to be overwhelming. I really try to preach mental health before take care of your mental
1000%.
health before you try to take care of your case, because what ends up happening, and I see people getting burnt out, is they go off the deep end. They
Right.
start screaming at their attorneys, writing long,
Yep.
unintelligible emails like you need
I
to do
can
this
honestly
and
say that since Grayson's death, all of the research that I've had to do, reading all the text messages and talking parents and pictures and all this evidence I gathered for after his death, it literally had such an impact on my mental health where I was just constantly put back into that place when I keep rereading it. And it was really hard. Now, I'm just curious, in your court watching, all the cases that you have watched, has Grayson's Law ever come up?
no, we have not had Grayson's Law used in any of our cases so far. And I have been asking, hey, is anyone using Grayson's Law? And the number one question that we get all the time is, and I get emails about it every single day. How do we use Grayson's Law? How do we use Grayson's Law? My attorney doesn't want to use Grayson's Law. And one of the biggest things that we talk about is Grayson's Law is not just Grayson's Law. It's Florida statute.
It's
It is the law. There's
right.
no Grayson's Law. Like, I think what people think when they think Grayson's Law is it's just this own law in its own bubble. No, it's part of 61.13. It's part of the child statute in Florida. It's in there. It's in the Florida statute. So this is not just its own lone star. You're applying Florida statute to here. And if I would recommend, if your attorney doesn't want to use it because there's no case law, I've seen attorneys who don't want to use case law because it's not in the statute. So it goes both ways, right?
Well,
You
there's
kind of,
case law now. It's called Kessler. But
yeah.
I will say, I know that the family law sector of the Florida Bar did a whole course on Grayson's Law, which I recorded and I have available on my YouTube page for Grayson's Choice and graysonschoice.org. And there are many tools out there from different law firms even that have put out information on Grayson's Law and how to apply it to your case. So
I
if you
have
ever get someone that asks that again, direct them to those.
I will definitely. And Ali, I did see one injunction recently that was sent to us that had an entire section dedicated to Greyson's Law. I have the wording of it, and it's going to go up, and I'll share it with you too. It's going to go up on the facts website, and there's going to be a page on our facts website dedicated to Greyson's Law, talking about it, the development of it, and also the wording to use in an injunction, because I thought the wording was fantastic. I thought the attorney did a fantastic job. So that's another thing
Yeah,
that's
I'd love
great
to.
about that's another thing that's great about court watching is you have access to being able to see all of these different cases and the motions filed. And
Right. And the
one thing I
lawyers, you can actually suggest maybe a lawyer. I know people ask me all the time if I know of a good lawyer, and I say I know of a not good lawyer.
yeah, I would. And here's the thing is like we try to stay away from recommending attorneys because we don't know what would be the best fit for your case.
Sure.
But one of the things that I will say is after you get recommended an attorney, court watch their cases. Ask
Right.
them, can I come see your case? Can I come see one of your cases? I'd love to see you practice. I'd love to see you litigate.
Do you
Feel
have to
out.
ask? Can you just show up to someone's
Well,
court
you
case?
can. You can look up their bar number. There's certain, so every docket, every county in Florida has a different website for their clerk of court. And this is, it's perfect timing. I was going to mention this is, oh, I recommend every single person, whether you have an attorney or don't, get registered user access to your county and your clerk of court. Registered user access so that you can see your court documents. You don't have to ask your attorney. You can see the timeline and you can see every motion filed and you have access to everything. You're also able to search for other cases. And in certain counties, like Palm Beach, you're able to search an attorney's bar number. So before you hire an attorney, you can see all the cases that they have right now, their caseload in that county. You can also see what they're filing, how well their motions are written, if they're winning their motions, if they're winning their hearings. So doing research on attorneys becomes easier when you have access to things like that because I think we go in blind. We just find an attorney and you have to just go off of what you feel. But doing more research, digging in a little bit further is better because when you search their name, you might only find a couple, one or two appeals or something like that. You don't get to see the full scope of what they're doing because you don't want an attorney that's got 50 cases on their docket right now.
So, how do people request court watch, I guess? So, someone should just reach out to facts and then you'll find people for their specific case?
So, yes, there is a button on our website that is request a court watch. And
Can you
there's,
say the name of the website? I'll put it in the show notes
yeah,
as well.
it is factscourtwatch.org. FACTS courtwatch.org. And there is a button on our website that says request a court watch. We are now taking anonymous requests. So we used to ask for people's names, and now we're not going to be doing that because we don't want to deter anyone from seeking help. And we also want to maintain our neutrality. So if we go into a court hearing and we don't know who asked us to be there, that helps us maintain our neutrality and seeing what's going on, right? And reporting accurately. So we want that data really bad. I really want that data. So we want to go into courts neutral, not being aggressive, not being like I'm on this side or on that side, just seeing what's happening. The judges tend to explain more when someone is in as a court watch because they are pandering to the audience at that point. So they want to talk to explain why they're making their decision. They're a little bit more gentle with pro se litigants. They're minding their P's and the Q's more. And the
Sure.
attorneys are too. Attorneys are behaving better because you have a room full of potential clients.
Right.
So you want to behave
Absolutely.
better.
Yeah. I appreciate all of your work, your hard work, and I guess thankful as a friend for all the help that all of the parent advocates showed me after Grayson's death. I probably wouldn't be here today without it. And I look forward to hearing what's next and what more we can do for parents in Florida.
I'm really happy that you had me on your show, Allie. There's not enough words in the world that can explain the impact that you're having. Just showing up and holding space for people and using your voice. And I think that you're honoring Grayson's legacy and his memory every single day just
Thank
by
you.
being here.
I have a big voice, or a loud voice, I should say.
And I'll tell you, that little boy is the reason that many of us don't stop because we're not forgetting Greyson and we're not forgetting Melody and we're not forgetting Cassie Carly. We're not going to forget those names. Our reason why it's important because we do feel that these deaths are preventable.
Have you heard about Caden's Law?
Yes. The
Right.
mom is phenomenal. She is a
So
power.
I just had Danielle Pollock on the podcast, and she helped orchestrate Greyson's Law in the beginning, but a lot of it got cut out due to the Florida bar not wanting certain details. And parts of Caden's Law we want to see put into Greyson's Law that has to do with the mandated trainings and things like that. So hopefully, maybe one day we can all sit down, you and I and the rest of Florida Protective Parents and Facts can talk about ways that we can get Caden's Law, which is federal, and then we'd have funding for it here in Florida and either amend Greyson's Law or start another law.
Yeah, I think it's so sad that we have Greyson's Law and then we see Cassie's Law, and now there's more deaths, and it's just this is the only time that you guys are going to listen to us.
Right. Until it happens to them. All right, Lily. Well, I will talk to you very soon, and we thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge about Court Watch, and I'm going to look into it more. And if you need any watchers, you let me know.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. If there's someone that you want to hear from on this podcast, please feel free to send me an email. Or if you would like to be a guest, please reach out at Allie@graysonschoice.org.